Welcome to another class of Python for app development. In this class, I'm going to show you every step you have to follow to display the value of the slider inside of your console. In our previous classes, I've shown you how you can create a slider. Well, if you don't still know, or if you have any confusion about the previous class, make sure or feel free to ask, always there to help you out. And also, you have to watch every videos very properly and not skip any part, because if you still don't know how to create a slider, it's going to be a hassle for you in this class. So I would suggest you go check out that video again. And then when you can, or when you're successful creating a slider, then move on to this class. So without any further ado, let's move on with our class by opening up PyCharm on our device. As you can see on my screen, PyCharm. But the first thing you need to know is that when you want to create a label, which is going to represent the value of your slider inside the console like this, okay? So there we go. We have two sliders, but just in case, I'm going to be removing one of them because I don't need two sliders. And over there on that space, I'm going to be creating up the label, okay? So this specific value, which I already have over here, I want them to be visible over here, just like this counter over here, okay? So to create that, we are going to have to create ourselves first a new string. So to create a new custom string, we have to go off over here into the widget example, and right after string property, we are going to create ourselves another one. So here I'm going to command it hash with the slider value text. So I'm going to put in slider underscore value, then underscore txt. Okay, so now you're going to put this up, and then you're going to go off creating yourself a label. So now here, I'm going to create myself up a label. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to put in label colon, and I want a specific text. So here inside my text, I'm going to put in value, or maybe let's say represent. I'm going to put in represent value. Okay. So this is what I want it to be visible. So if I play this out, you can see represent value. So what I want is that when I am using the slider over here, these specific values should be represented on this specific value. Okay. So in case it will look, when I have created, it will look like specifically this. Maybe if I want 100, it's going to be saying 100. If I reduce it, it's going to reduce up the number according to where I keep this button. Okay, so now let's move on. So the first thing, what we're going to do is going to be creating a class inside, or let's say a variable inside my main py file. So here I'm going to be creating myself up that class. So here I'm going to put in equal, and I'm going to turn it into a string of my specific value. So I'm going to put in string. I'm going to put in property. So string property is going to be a specific default value. So let's say I'm going to put in represent value. Okay. So that is my default value. And now we have to keep going down. And there we go. We have our slider value over here. So one thing what I'm going to do is going to be copying this Control C. And I'm going to go off over here on the slider, and I'm going to root it up, okay? Because I want it to be bypassed. So I'm going to put in root dot slider value text, okay? Now if I play this out, you will see basically this is the thing which I want, okay? So now if I go off to the main py file, we have to create or customize our functions over here on the slider value. Okay, now what I'm going to do is going to be using self slider value text right over here. So I'm going to go down. There we go, slider value. And here I'm going to put in self dot slider value text over here. And then I'm going to put in my specific value, which is going to be equal to the string int value. Okay. So I'm going to put in this equal to this value. So I'm going to put in two of these, Control C. I'm going to put in equal. And there we go, we have that specific value. So if I play this out, you'll basically see, there we go, we have our data, and now it is being represented over here. But now you can see this is an integer value. So if I close this off, and I'm going to keep this on 100 to be maximum. So I'm going to go over here, and here I'm going to put in 100. And if I play this out, it's going to be up till 100. Okay. So now over here, if I put in a specific value, maybe let's say 80, And now if I play this out, it's going to show me represent value, but not the exact value which I want it to be shown. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that first off, we're going to be creating ourselves up that interface where we can also show our float values instead of our, let's say, integer values too. Okay. And you can also see this over here. If I play this, if I just use this, it is still visible over here. Okay. So another thing, what we can do to make our slider or this value very efficient is that we're going to go off the main py file, and there we go. We have this self function over here. We're going to close this off by commanding it to postpone. So I'm going to postpone this and also the slider valued string property over here. So if I just put in command over here, now if I just play this out, it will also just give me the represent value data, or it's going to show me this error. Okay. So we don't want that error. And we're going to do is going to be customizing it in such a way so that it is more efficient to work with float values. Okay. So first off, we have to represent our specific text over here. So inside my text, I'm going to put in a specific value. So let's say this is going to say number. Okay. So I'm going to put in number, and that is what I want as my value. And you'll basically see it's just going to show me number. Okay. It's given me the data over here, but not onto my console. Okay. It's just showing me numbers. So now we're going to be customizing or modifying our, let's say, function or our KV file with another function, which is called ID. Okay. So we're also going to be creating another class or another variable into my main py file. But first off, we just have to stay on this slider over here. And right after slider, I'm going to create out myself an ID. So after that, colon, and I'm going to create myself a class or a definition, let's say my number or my slider. Okay. So there we go. We have my own slider. But if you want to make this slider or make your, let's say, command line a lot more easier, you don't even have to go to main py file. Okay. But you can use a specific property, but it's going to be just more confusing. So if you want to make it a lot more easier, then you have to use my slider, the ID of this command line, into your text. So you're also going to be rooting it up, but instead of rooting it, you can only use it as a specific numerical value. So if I want to use this as a numerical value, I'm going to copy this, Control C, as my slider. And over here, I'm going to just use this specific value, let's say my slider, and then you're going to use a specific value. Okay, so I'm going to put in value over here. I'm going to create myself a bit of space. Now, if I still play it out, it might show me an error like this, because this is a numerical value and Python is not going to take a numerical value just like that. Okay. So you have to turn this into a string. Okay. I'm going to put in str, open up the parentheses, and you're going to close up the parentheses inside over here. There we go. We have created ourselves my value. If I play this, this is how it should show me. And there we go. It is showing me the float values too instead of the integer value. And we're also getting the integer value inside of my terminal. Okay. So if I put in 80 over here, if I play this out, it's going to give me 80 from the beginning. Okay. So now this part has been fixed. Okay. So as this part has been fixed, now what if I want this to be shown in an integer value, not a float value? Okay. But it will also stay, or it will keep the same values over here wherever it is. Let's say if I just remove this string or my slider value, it's not going to work. Okay. But if you want to turn this into an integer value, so I'm going to put in int, open up the parentheses and close off the parentheses at the end and play this out. And it's going to show me an integer value in the terminal and also in the console inside the app. Okay, so you can see this is how it is working. And now you know how you'll be able to display the text or display the specific value inside of your console or your app. Now, as we have created ourselves these type of command lines, you can also remove a couple of functions which you've put inside of the slider and also in the main py file. So I'm going to do is going to be on value. I'm going to postpone this, put in a space, and this is postponed. You're going to go after the main py file, and there we go. Make sure that you are on the slider over here, and you can also close or let's say command this to be postponed over here. And then you're also going to be postponing another value, but you're going to keep out the print command, okay? And you can also postpone this one. So I'm going to close this off too. There we go. If I play this out, and there we go, we still see that this is working. Okay. So these are like two types of syntaxes which you can follow up, and how you can actually make your slider and the interaction between the slider and the display bar to be a lot more efficient. Okay. So hope you understood about everything in this class on how you'll be able to create or display the text of your slider inside a label. You can also display that inside a button too at the same time, because what you basically have to do is that you just have to turn this into a button, but sometimes buttons don't basically work. So if I turn this into a button, this is how the button should look like, and you can see this is also showing me how this is working. Okay, there we go. Even if you represent it inside a button, even if you put it inside a label, it's still going to show you that numerical value where you keep the slider. And only it's going to show the value if you use the slider, but not the button. Okay? If you want to change the orientation, you just basically have to change this orientation over here. We just have to basically type in vertical if it is on horizontal, and the slider will change and the data is still being displayed. And another thing is that you can see a couple of things which I've used are made up as my own variable. So if I just change this word, not slider, if I put in just slide, okay? So there we go. We have my slide. You're going to also have to change this one, my slide. You have to change this one too. So I'm going to like cut up this value, put in slide. I'm going to go off over here as all of these are already, like postponed, but we're going to also put in slide. That's it. Then we have slider value over here. And now if I still play it out, it will still work. Okay. Because those things are the keywords which I've used. They're being used as a specifical, let's say, variable. Okay. So you can put in whatever you want. Even if you put in orange, just make sure that the specific keyword is being used on all of these values. Okay. So thank you for watching this video up till the very end, and hope you understood about everything in this class. If you still have any confusion or any question about any part of this lesson, feel free to ask me anytime. I'm always there to help you out. So without any further ado, let's move on to our next class of Python for app development.